This is the 90 Degree Show brought to you by the Marching Podcast. And now here's your host, the Phantom Podcaster himself, Joe Beard.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 90 Degree Show. I'm your host, Joe Beard, and happy to be of service for you. This is week 6 of the 2016 season, and we appreciate all those listening through iTunes, Facebook, Twitter, our website, our blog, or wherever you are on the interwebs. At the end of the broadcast, if you decide you like the show, then we appreciate a donation to the network if you feel so in your heart, of course. Just simply go to themarchingpodcast.com and click on the donate button to help improve the show and help build our scholarship fund. This podcast is brought to you by Block Band Music and Publishing, The Edge One Productions, and Double Time Entertainment. We welcome you to the 2016 season of the 90 Degree Show. We are happy to talk another year about our beloved schools. Super excited to be broadcasting in our new studio and ready to introduce the new format to the show. If you would like to be on the show to talk about the battle you attended, you are welcome to do so and be a part of our recording. We will talk to someone who attended the event each week in our roundtable discussions. In this podcast, we welcome back Rashad to discuss the North Carolina A&T versus Hampton game, and Rashad and I watched the video for Jackson State versus Mississippi Valley. Rashad and I also have an interesting conversation about the perception of what is black in America. It started talking about Luke Cage, the new series on Netflix with the black superhero, but Rashad brings up some things that he noticed, and we kind of go off topic in talking about it briefly. I think you'll enjoy, and it's good enough to at least spark some type of conversation. You can email the show at marchingpodcast@gmail.com, tweet us at marchingpodcast, or follow our blog, blog4.themarchingpodcast.com. Week 6, the year is going by, and I have the magnanimous Rashad Waters, owner and founder of Block Band Music and Publishing. What's going on, Rashad?
What is happening there, sir? Week 6, I can't believe it. I remember when we were complaining, waiting on marching band season to start.
I know.
Halfway through? What in the world?
I know, halfway through. Rashad, what did you do this week?
Oh, man, I did so much this week. On Thursday, I went to A&T Hampton game. For the moment, I wasn't going to go, and then boom, decided to go. Saturday, well, before I get to Saturday, I've also been checking out Luke Cage on Netflix.
Oh, it started?
Yeah, Luke Cage started on Friday.
Okay, thank you for telling me. I'll be doing this after the recording.
Yeah, man, Luke is a pretty cool show, man. I'm really liking it. I like the show overall, but it does show a lot of those negative things that you tend to see a lot of times with black people. Everything happens in the hood, or you're dropping the N-word like constantly. They say that this show shut down Netflix because it was so popular and so many people watching it. But how do we expect other people not to call us this when we're dropping it all the time? And it's just so great. Go to a black college football game, and I'm not really hearing that constantly all the time. Not hearing the N-word all the time. The announcer's not like, "Oh, y'all N's over there," blah blah blah. You're not hearing that. It's just a positivity, and I love it. Also, on Saturday, I went to the Dillon High School Battle of the Bands. Block Band was very excited to be there. We helped to sponsor the event. We actually sponsored the Grand Champion Trophy, and I was able to present that trophy to Darlington High School out of Darlington, South Carolina. They did a fantastic job. My hat's off to them because, fortunately, one of the side effects about these competitions is that it has started to teach some of our bands to play softer because the judges are sometimes on them so much about overblowing and things like that. And we don't want them to overblow, but I don't want the crowd to suffer because now you're kind of sounding like a core style band at high steps. We still want to hear you. But I'm telling you, boy, Darlington, man, they were putting out some amps for you.
Nice.
Their band director's a Bethune-Cookman grad. I mean, it sounded like a Bethune-Cookman out there. I mean, it was just a really big, really full sound that just really got everybody's attention. So it's nice that a band that plays loud can win. We were also excited. There was roughly about 20 bands there. Of the 20 bands that were there, 8 of them were Block Band customers. We got to give a shout out to McCormick High School, purchased the music from us and shoes and drill, and Ridgeland Hardyville High School, Dillon High School, Military Magnet Academy, Lamar High School, Hope County High School, Crestwood High School, and Denmark Olar High School.
That's good, man. That's good. I didn't do too much. I was pretty much cleaning up and getting my schedule back in order after the baby dedication last week and after all the family was in town and everything. I did that. Thanks for telling me about Luke Cage, because I want to check that out. Another thing, it made me think about NWA or gangster rap and all of those things. It seems like that's what gets national attention. You brought up a really interesting point where this movie or this thing is always happening here. We're always referring to each other as the N-word. There's a lot of studies that says that that is what, quote unquote, the majority of the country, and you know what I mean, that's what they prefer to see. For example, this podcast here, even if we had millions of dollars, or I think if we had Oprah or if we had someone giving us a backing, I still think it would be harder for us to catch a national attention because we are showing things in a more positive light. We are not hooded out, and even though we make jokes or something like that, that's not the basis of this show. So there's enough studies to show that this is what is considered to be entertainment when you see young black folks in those circumstances. Paul Mooney has a joke. He said he was writing a horror movie and it was young black kids in school. And of course he didn't say young he didn't say young black kids in school. Of course you know what he said. But
right.
But that's the point, where that seems to be what the country or other folks other than black folks, that's what they want to see. We talk about gangster rap, we talk about other things. It's like, oh my God, how could they talk about this glorifying violence? Well, it seems like the record companies are cutting the checks and they're going into these neighborhoods, and it's not like they hollering at me and Rashad. You know what I mean? Or it's not like they hollering at people like, hey, I want to go to college. Even with sports, like a linebacker or someone, they do their story. It all changed one night when he woke up and heard gunshots in his sleep. You know what I'm saying? But you don't ever hear, oh, Rashad Waters makes the tackle. Do you know Rashad he's got both his parents and they went to college? Like, you don't ever hear that. You know what I'm saying?
You opened some doors for me just now, because I didn't even think about the fact that it's what the nation wants to see. I kind of look at it as kind of like, oh, this is what we want to see, so they're putting this stuff out there. But you're right. It's not necessarily what we want to see. It's what everybody else wants to see. They want to see things that fit into the stereotype of what they think about us already.
Because it makes them feel better.
Right. It's like, and me and you, like, and other people, there's so many of us out there. It's like, man, I don't ever use the N-word. I don't ever use it. I don't, it's not me. You explain me perfectly. Yeah, I'm middle class. I'm from a good neighborhood. It's a black neighborhood, but it's not like Donald Trump was talking about, oh, you know, shootings and stuff all the time. But there also are a lot of great places that black people grow up. We have both of our parents, and we went to school and all these type of things. And I remember after I graduated from kind of like when I was in college, you look towards society to kind of figure out, well, how should I dress? How should I style myself? And I found it was very difficult for me. I couldn't look like any of those rappers because that's not me.
Right.
I'm not going to sag my pants. I'm not going to wear all black all the time. This is not my style. Like, how should I look? And I know that there's a lot of guys that they dress differently than probably how they really are. It's like a thug type of dress. Yes. But I'm not really a thug, but there's not really any other type of way that people dress, and you are not being soft, so I'm just going to dress this way.
And it really bleeds over to like this idea of being black is this lower social economic circumstance. If you're black, you know how to fight. You know what I'm saying? You know somebody that's got shot. It's like they're concentrating so much on what's in the hood. But then if you actually go like to your background or my background, Rashad, that don't even want to get national attention.
It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. The more that you go in and you say, okay, who should we choose to represent music? I'm going to choose these guys that quote unquote are talking about their life, whether that's actually their life or not. and this is their story, and they're talking about drugs, and they're talking about guns and all these type of things. And so the young people see that, and they say, oh, well, I guess that's what my life should be. And so they get involved in that when they probably otherwise might not even be involved in that type of life.
Mm-hmm.
And so now it's a reality. I remember at my school, I went to a majority white school, but we had a very large African American populace. I remember how the athletes would dress. The athletes would wear like polo shirts and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they had on shorts, and they looked good, cared about their appearance. And I remember going from that, you know, teaching and going into school, and I didn't see that anymore. I found it very hard to find a young man that was dressed classy. They all wanted to have the thug look. I got my pants hanging down look. The only way that you dress classy is that you were a nerd. Versus when I was in school, which, like I said, is only 6 years. And I'm not talking about now, 20 years later. I'm talking about 6 years later. When I was in school, the cool guys dressed classy. And I think so much of that is that self-fulfilling prophecy. They feature the hood mentality and all this type of things, and that just only makes it worse.
Had some really good matchups this week. We had a Thursday night game, A&T. We had North Carolina A&T, and we saw them a little bit from the Queen City, but we also had the great Hampton University, the alma mater of our very own Rashard Waters.
Right.
And then I think for a second, guess what's that, Facebook Live or whatever it is, I saw you were posting live from the game. And that was the first time I've seen that.
Yeah, it was pitiful too. The signal kept cutting out. It was pitiful. The security guard made me leave the track.
Wow, really?
Yes, sir. Even though there was 47 people on the track, he made me leave the track.
You were threatening. You were threatening looking, Rashad, because you tall. That's what it is.
And it was a brother too, but you know, with everything going down, I didn't want a Black Lives Matter situation to happen. I just left the track.
I know, because it ain't that much black and white. No pun intended. It ain't just black and white no more. Sometimes even the brother officers, they be off the chain too. You know, you just don't know.
Need to write music and drill? Get it on the field. Outfit your band. Keep your administrator happy and still have a life. Encountering drama in the process, ain't nobody got time for that. Let Block Band Music assist you with musical arrangements and drills to fit your band, and also the equipment, gear, and accessories to keep the visuals, music, and marching on point. Contact blockbandmusic@gmail.com and see how this worldwide minority-owned business can uplift your band.
Hey, band heads, this is Christy Walker. I'm alumni of the North Carolina A&T Blue and Gold Marching Machine and one of the creators of thefifthquarter.com. And you are listening to the 90 Degree Show on the Marching Podcast Network.
Outstanding that you were able to get a chance to go to the game. It's always good since you were there. You have, like, we get the double Prunalysis and we get someone there live at the game. So I asked you, what was your initial reaction to the event? Was it positive or negative?
You know what? My reaction was actually very, very positive. It was just nice to be at a game late at night on a Thursday with black people. We get such a negative light sometimes. Sometimes we show a negative light. Sometimes we just get cast in a negative light. To see all the energy and the positivity that was going on. The band would play a song and people would get hype, or the DJ would play something and people would get hype, and then something would happen with the football teams. It was just such a positive thing, man. If you haven't gone to an HBCU, or if you're thinking about going to an HBCU, I definitely would recommend it because it's such a unique experience. Yeah, you see Carolina and you see Duke and you see all these things, and that's great. But just to know that black people can have some equally positive things. I really enjoyed the event, listening to both bands in the stands. That, of course, is very, very unique.
Well, yeah, I think you bring up a really good point. I'm glad you said what you said, because it really is important for black people, I think all people, to surround themselves with who they are and learn about where they're from, because it really benefits everyone versus, quote unquote, all of us trying to be the same. I think that's a major problem where people say we would all get along if we all thought the same, but it's also good to hear about your Crispus Attucks or your Mashway Shways or your Toussaint L'Ouvertures. It's important to hear about those people too, so that everyone feels empowered. I'm glad you said what you said. I really wish that every young black kid could go to an HBCU game or have that experience like we had growing up. Who were you looking forward to see?
Excited to see Hampton. The band director's second year there now. Excited to see what's happening there, because when I was back in school in the 90s, which is forever ago, I mean, it's amazing how old we are, Joe, but you're talking about, I started the band over 20 years ago. So I am now that person that comes to homecoming, and when you're in the band, it's like, God, who's that old dude? Just, God, why does he go have a life? Why does he come around? I'm that person now. But I remember those days just as clear as day. Or who's the top 10 band? And I'll never say that we were on everybody's top 10 list. We weren't like that. But if any random person had a top 10, we might be on that list from time to time. Or if they said who's got the best sounding band, that was our claim to fame, that we really sounded good. We weren't necessarily pushing all the watts in the world. Couldn't put anything on how we sounded. I just miss those days. I want it to be a time where people are talking about Hampton again. Good or bad. At least you want to be to a point where people hate you. Talladega catches a lot of slack, but at least people are talking about it. I just want Hampton to be there again. So I was excited to see Hampton's band. And of course, I've been a fan for A&T, for old A&T and new A&T. Definitely a fan of them, particularly being in North Carolina. You're kind of required to be. Very excited to see both bands.
Were there any surprises and or were there any disappointments?
As far as surprises, I think the thing that surprised me the most was A&T's band. A&T, to me, seems to be a band that really takes constructive criticism very well. And also, they actually do things about it. I've seen this band progress quite a bit over the last few years. For example, when they first started doing hybrid type of drilling, people used to complain, oh, you don't lift your feet up. Your marching is terrible. And so the next year, whenever you watch their band, those legs are way up in the air. And they actually do a pretty decent job of actually hitting the yard lines or hitting their formations on time. I remember I complained about, oh, your trombones, first trombones are out of tune, or when you guys go up, you're out of tune. This year, that's much better. In the past 2 years, one of the major things they've caught flack over is their stands performance.
Yeah.
I mean, every band has to give somewhere. They are doing extremely intricate shows and doing multiple shows, many more shows probably than any other band that's out there right now. And they're doing it at a level of challenge that's probably more difficult than anybody else that's out there. So where do you lose? Well, you lose in the stands. Even though A&T has historically been, that was their claim to fame. It used to be like their show was decent, but they're going to crank on you in the stands.
Right.
But I was very excited to hear how they sounded in the stands on Thursday. I feel like they did a really good job. I feel like a lot of the music that they played through, you could tell that they had worked on it and gotten it pretty good. And it was a pretty decent fifth quarter, man. I mean, it was about 45 minutes.
What?
Both bands were going back and forth. They lasted until almost midnight.
Nice.
Yeah, so that was really, really, really cool, man. I really enjoyed that. Excited to see what's going to happen with Hampton. Perhaps it's not this year. I know that when a new band director comes in, it takes several years for that band program to become theirs.
Moving. Yeah.
It just takes some time, and I will be continuing to support. I was supported a little bit to the band while I was there, and I'll support some more the homecoming, because I'm not just going to talk noise, nor am I going to celebrate. I'm going to do my part to support and see the band come back up again. Normally, the first note of every song, boom! That's the major bands. That's what you always hear. When you think about your Southerns, your Jacksons, even your Bethunes, that first note is it's confident.
Yep.
And it's not quite there. It's kind of like maybe by the time we get to the third measure, now we're really giving it to you.
Oh, okay.
And then by the time we get to the last note, it's not really echo. It's kind of like we're kind of dying off there. And a lot of that has to do with confidence and passion in what you're doing.
I think it is probably about 70, maybe 8, who knows, maybe even 90% mental. Like you say, you come out there, We'll be talking about Valley and Jackson State in the next segment, but that's the biggest thing that I noticed between the fifth and those two is just that confident. Valley would play something, but then when Jackson State came back, it had a little Russell Westbrook in it. You know what I mean? It just had some that anger. It had a chip on the shoulder. So yeah, I totally hear what you're saying as far as that goes. I didn't get to see Hampton. I saw a film of them, I guess against Howard, but it wasn't good enough because it was from the back and I didn't really hear the sound of the band. But I totally feel what you're saying, man. What was the best part of the event?
The thing I enjoyed was just the fifth quarter, just having the opportunity to have a long fifth quarter. I've been to A&T homecoming probably the last 2 or 3 years in a row, and it's like you go there, you're excited about it, and it's like 5 songs, maybe probably 3 songs, and we're done.
Right.
So I have had the opportunity or other times that I've seen A&T, they might be playing like Elon College or somebody like that. So there is no such thing as a fifth quarter battle. So I haven't had a chance to see that. So having the opportunity to have those bands match up against each other, and Hampton wasn't going anywhere. You know, their band director, whether they were at their best or not, he seemed determined that he was going to stay and stick it out for a while.
Was there a worse part of the event or something? It's like, dang, I wish that wouldn't have happened.
The worst part of the event was, I know the whole staff at Hampton, and one of the guys' staff kind of got turned around a little bit and was thinking that they were going to be performing towards the away side. And this was the whole thing that got me kicked off the track, because I'm like, oh, you're performing towards the away side. And he and we both went to the away side. You know, he had the ladder. All of a sudden, I guess he gets the cue, hey, where are you going? We're performing towards the home side. So I see him leave, but I don't really understand what's going on. So I'm thinking I need to tell all the Double Time Entertainment guys, hey, Hampton's performing towards the away side. Because that's what they did at Howard. They performed at the away side because apparently there was more Hampton people there than there were Howard people. So they decided just to go ahead and perform for Hampton.
Okay.
So I'm going back across the field. I guess the mistake that I made was that I went like right behind the end zone. Like I didn't go around the track. I went right behind the end zone. As I'm doing that, like I caught eye of a security guard. And you're like, when you're in the classroom, you just kind of try to put your head down. Maybe they won't see you.
Right.
Yeah. So anyway, I went back. I told the Double Time Entertainment guys. Thankfully, they didn't listen to me. They stayed where they were. By the time I went back over, the dude was like, hey, you have a pass? Well, what am I with one of the bands? Because here I am. I was just hanging out with Dr. Ruff at Hampton for like 20 minutes. And like half the staff hanging out with them, right there on the track. I only had a chance to talk to Hampton staff for just a couple minutes. But here I am hanging out with both of the staffs with both bands. So I'm kind of in there. Mm-hmm. I didn't have to pass, so I had to go. So here I am trying to get to the away side in the stands. So I walk all the way in the stands to the away side. Then Hampton opens up and they perform towards the home side. I'm like, well, crack-a-doodle. So I had to go all the way around. I just made that up. All the way back around in the stands now, trying to record. Nobody can see anything on Facebook Live because the camera's vibrating a little bit, and I'm recording Hampton from the side, and I can't get to the 50-yard line. Hampton finishes, so I try to finally get right in front of A&T's band, and Facebook Live won't work at all. Like, oh, you don't have no signal, sorry. It was like a minute and a half left in the half when I started recording. But that took like almost 10 minutes. So I'm like, all right, guys, we're almost ready. It's a minute and a half. All right, here we go. It's a minute and 27 seconds. And then the time went back up again at like 30 seconds. Like, I'm like trying to hype everybody up, but it was just a fail. Really much. It's a complete fail all across the board.
So last, I have to ask you, who had the better performance between the two schools?
I have to tell the truth. I think A&T did a great job. I mean, I really did. A&T they're very competitive right now with the other bands that are at the top of the game right now. My school is still rebuilding. I'm looking forward to seeing what's going to happen in the future. But, I mean, A&T did a really great job.
Is that for halftime? What do you think about the fifth? The same did you think about the fifth?
Yeah, same thing.
Double Time Entertainment,
Our passion is music and promoting HBCU marching bands as well as high school marching bands through high-quality movie videos and photos. We have worked with BET, Yamaha, Ludwig, Honda Motor Company, and been featured on CNN and Lifetime Network's series Bama State Style. We also help and orchestrate Battle of the Bands with marketing and promotions, and also became the official media team for the Queen City Battle of the Bands in Charlotte, North Carolina. Join Double Time Entertainment on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube, and now new on Periscope. Music lovers are noteworthy.
This is Gregory Drain, Director of Athletic Bands at Penn State University, former marching Wildcat at Bethune-Cookman University, and you're listening to the 90 Degree Show on the Marching Podcast Network.
What was your overall reaction at the end of the event?
Well, I was excited, and yet I was filled with school pride from the standpoint of, man, I got to do something. I have to get involved in this. One of the advantages about A&T over many, many years is that they always have a lot of alumni to come. Like, there's lots of gold jackets, because that's what they call them, the gold coats, and those are the people that are on staff. And there's normally only like a handful of people actually on the staff, maybe 2 or 3, but they have a lot of volunteers. And then outside of the gold coats, then you have other people that just volunteer just in general. Hampton is a little bit different because of the nature of Hampton, and Howard, I think, probably goes through a similar situation maybe. Our demographic brings in people from all across the world. My freshman year roommate came to school with me from Durham, but my sophomore roommate was from Portland, Oregon. My roommate, my junior, senior, and super senior years was from Accra, Ghana. Wow. We're bringing in people from all across the place. So when they leave, they go back to New Mexico and Utah and Florida and Germany, wherever they came from. So it's much harder to have that alumni presence that's there in the area to help out like A&T has, because probably the huge majority of people that go to A&T are probably from North Carolina.
I've always had this thought in my mind because of what my situation would happen at Hampton. And for the listeners that want to know, I originally was on the way to Hampton. I was actually in the pre-college there at Hampton, and then something happened, and then I ended up at Johnson C. Smith. After I got to Jackson State, if I didn't get in trouble at Hampton, and I stayed in the band, would I have wanted to transfer to Jackson State? Now, the situation at Smith, it wasn't normal because you don't expect a high school to come and perform that way. You're not expecting that at a college. So I don't think that would have happened at Hampton. But just what you're saying right now, Rashad, I wonder if I would have recognized that when I was there. Or if I would have been in love with Hampton so much and being there at Hampton that I would have just stayed at the school and not so much worried about being in the band. And the reason why I say all that is because at Jackson State, man, it's just like Alabama football. I love that Jackson State is like that. We have a lot of alumni. We have an alumni association, actually. And we also have our communication where when we perform, there's so much talk about it. It's just that support for the band that you talk about. Essentially is what I'm getting at. People at Jackson State are just crazy.
Peep you in on a little bit of conversation that I heard. Somebody was associated, they're not in the band, but they were around the band. They're trying to get the university to support the band more. I mean, you got to. The number one problem with Hampton and Howard and probably Morehouse and other schools that are Johnson C. Smith, Hampton's tuition now is probably, I don't even know what it is, honestly. It's probably closing in on $25,000, $30,000 a year. If we say XYZ college, state college, university, and they give you a $1,000, $1,500, $5,000 scholarship, man, you're probably doing pretty good. Mm-hmm. With us, that's not really doing much. And so we're losing our students. You have to give more. You have to be willing to come up with more in order to get those students there.
Bridget, we talked about this very same thing last week in week 5, and she said the exact same thing. The only thing she was bringing up was that it was a fine line to make sure that the university is doing the right things with the money and they're not putting themselves in the red to fund the band program. The other thing she was saying on the other side was that Morgan State's president, this would trip me out. She said Morgan State's president be on Facebook showing the band, practice with the band. And man, I was really excited to do the show with her last week because Morgan looks good. And I'm like, well, how does Morgan look? And I was like, I like Morgan. I like the Savannah States. I like those bands that we don't really usually hear about when they come, because that adds value to what we doing. And it was really cool. But the main thing that jumped out at me is that it was the president doing all of this. So that's what, like you saying, if the president is on board, you then see the numbers then Morgan has. Because Morgan was big. Morgan is bigger than Valley. I know we're about to talk about Valley, but Morgan is bigger than Mississippi Valley. Oh, yeah, man. I have to send you that clip. We are ready to talk about our second matchup here in Week 6 that we're going to dive into. Now, we didn't have anyone that attended this game, so Rashad and I will just talk about the video that we saw, and that is Jackson State and Mississippi Valley State. This year, Miss Tamisha Brock is one of the band directors on the staff, and she came from Elizabeth City. Is that correct?
Yes, was the director at Elizabeth City State.
And I know that we were talking about Elizabeth City and how we were impressed with them and how they were moving things along. So she's my Facebook friend, so I was all excited. And so then she posts that they were excited about their matchup with Jackson State. So I said, okay, we got to make sure we do Jackson State and give her a shout out for what she's doing. I'll get right into it. Who are you looking forward to see in this matchup, Rashad?
Both of them, really. The whole Alcorn State, Jackson State thing has been really interesting to see over the last few years. Because Jackson State has been basically running Mississippi for years. Mm-hmm. And so to see Alcorn State start to take fruit, and all of a sudden they're starting to become a competitor. So now it's like, okay, well, now there's this other school in Mississippi. Well, what are they going to do? Are they going to go that same route as Alcorn? Like, are they going to, within 2 or 3 years, are they going to really become a competitor? Because Alcorn State is a competitor now. Is that what's going to happen with Valley? So I was interested to see what's there. It's interesting because I'm not a SWAC person. I didn't go to a SWAC school. People, as I understand it, Mississippi Valley is kind of like the black sheep of the SWAC. The competition in the SWAC is just so high. It's high. You can get, I don't care who you are, you can get cut at any moment. And I think that's what makes the schools at the top of that so good. I think the other schools, as I understand it, just don't look at Valley, have never looked at Valley as being in that same league as they are. Like, Valley could be competitive probably in any other conference, but in the SWAC, right, they're just not cutting the mustard. Coming from the standpoint of that's all that I know about them. I haven't seen Valley enough to even be able to say, hey, wow, Valley's looking a whole lot better this year. I'm looking at Valley as just almost as if I've never seen them before. We talked about them about 2 years ago, where they had on the khakis and had on the bongos.
Yes, and the red berets.
Yeah, so I think we saw that performance kind of like looking straight at them and not from an aerial view. So I really still don't have a really good idea of what Valley's going to be or what. So I was very interested to see what Valley's going to look like. Also, I was interested to see what Jackson State was going to do.
I saw Jackson State in Vegas. When you bring up Valley with Jackson State, it's just like, oh, okay, that's not going to really be a contest. But I was interested to see what Miss Brock does and the flavor she brings. So when I first saw him, I saw the halftime show first. It still reminded me of like a CIAA school because of the numbers. I think they're rebuilding now, I believe, but excited to see what is she going to bring now to make them competitive. So what did you think of the halftime show?
The thing about the halftime show really sum up everything as far as Valley did. There is just a certain amount of attention to detail and pride in being excellent that I think that the band directors at Valley are trying to instill in them that it just don't have quite yet. And I think it's just going to take some time. When you see Jackson, you see it. when they started that drum major, kind of like I was telling you about Tennessee State, how I was yelling at the computer, that drum major interest made me so hyped because they were hyped and the band was just, John, woo, I'm like, yeah. And they were getting it, of course. Oh, man. And then I liked the fact that they started right there facing you instead of losing all the sound to the sidelines. And then their marching is just fantastic. Nice, pretty formations and things. The show, for the most part, was pretty exciting. And there's just that attention to detail. You can tell. I'm sure you know, Joe, having been in Jackson's band, that it's a mentality that's got to be impressed upon every student there, that we have to be the best. And it's not just discipline that comes from the band director. It's got to be a self-discipline that's instilled in you, that when you're out there marching, you're thinking to yourself, am I hitting the yard line at the right time? Am I doing this? Am I playing the right note? And Valley, I'm not trying to insult. I'm just trying to compare the difference between the two. You can tell that that's not there yet. I'll give you a prime example. When Valley made their very first opening formation, did you see that one whole squad went the wrong way?
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, and I saw they had holes in the field too, and that's all. And that always hurts, just having holes in the field.
Yeah. You might want to use some alternates. But how the heck does one whole squad do a slant the wrong way? How did that happen? Like, I would have imagined that the slant would have been like maybe buckled in the middle. One end of the slant would have been like, yeah, this is right, and the other end of the slant was like, no, this is right. But no, they just did it wrong.
Right.
Please watch it. Please, for those who are listening, please watch the video. You'll see what I'm talking about. Also, right there in the very front of the band, I'm sure you saw this, there's like a trumpet player. It's like a squad of 2 when it should have been 3. Somebody was missing. But that person is just literally walking.
Wow.
Did you see that? They are walking. And you can see them as they're going through the drill. It's not like a high step. Like sometimes you say, oh, they're walking, and they're not really lifting the leg up high. No, this person is walking, and they're right there on the front. And this, again, is that type of thing that I'm talking about. You got to have that pride in what you're doing instilled in you. And knowing Miss Brock, and I don't know head band director now, but I believe that that's what they're going to try to instill in them. When they were hitting the points of the diamonds, when they're doing the rotation, I was just talking to one of our customers the other day, and I was telling him, say, okay, when your kid's doing these rotations, and then when they get to the point of the diamond, you've got to nail that point so that when you turn, Kate does the flash. Boom. So you see that. Boom, 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 boom. Beautiful to see Southern do it. It's beautiful to see Tennessee State, because both of them have the capes. Mississippi Valley doesn't have the capes, but even still, instead of people marching towards corner, they're like cutting the corner like it's a circle. They just don't quite have it quite yet. On the other side of Jackson State, I thought Jackson State did a fantastic job. My only complaint maybe would have been during the drill, I could have gone to see something else, like towards the end of the drill. Like maybe in the past, they used to have the majorettes, so I guess the featured twirler, if it was a guy, kind of come out and do some things.
Right. Or
maybe another formation or something. Like when they made that really pretty formation at the beginning, that was cool. The marching was cool. The playing was cool. The step 2s that they were doing all the way across the field. Yeah, I was impressed that they could do it all the way across the field. I didn't think it looked the greatest, but it was impressive. But then after that, we needed something to kind of keep us going. For the announcer to say something, or somebody run out in the field and do a backflip or something. Like how the drum major just came through the center early on, something like that. To me, that kind of lowered the energy level for the rest of it. The other complaint, really, with both bands was the dance routines. Just didn't really feel the bands getting into the dance routines. Yesterday, I went to the Dillon High School Battle of the Bands, a band competition with like 20 high school bands there. And Savannah State's band showed up. And now I have a new standard as far as how hype a dance routine should be. Like anytime you're looking at bands, I believe that you should have a standard. This is what a good sound is. This is what great marching is. For me, Savannah State has now set the bar for this is what a hype dance routine looks like. And they were like really, like every time they did a move, they would squat down really low, uncomfortably low if you didn't practice that. And everything they did was, like they were hype, man. And I see now that people talk about the dance routines don't get any love anymore. Well, that's the reason, because the kids are not getting into the dance routines enough. So for neither band, I wasn't really excited. It's like when I saw bo 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 dog, What is that called?
Rock the House.
JSU Rock the House. When they were doing that, it was just kind of going through the moves. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Get into it. Like, do it. You know what I'm saying? This is the end of the show. Give it everything that you got. Overall, I thought that JSU definitely was the better band.
Hi, everyone. This is Joe Beer, the Phantom Podcaster and owner and founder of the Marching Podcast. I want to tell you guys about this website, theedge1pro.com. That's DAEDGE1pro.com. This is the website of my man Garrett Ederson, the media director for Southern University's Human Jukebox. If you want to see great bands and a good idea of the HBCU experience, log into theedge1pro.com. Garrett has photos and videos of events on campus, along with parades of bands of all levels. So check out the Edge One Productions and theedge1pro.com.
Hello, this is Charles Cheese Waters, proud graduate of Rusk College in Holly Springs, Mississippi, and father of the owner of Block Band Music and Publishing. And you're listening to the 90 Degrees Show on the Marching Podcast Network.
Guess we could sum up this week is confidence. That's what I noticed from Valley. And I think that they're, like you said, they're getting better. But I saw the numbers, and I figured that a couple years ago when we talked about them that they were bigger. So maybe they're in a rebuilding phase now. And I think they were controlled. I didn't hear too many trumpets out on the field, but their low brass and their tubas was cranking. I enjoyed that. I thought they had a good song for the drill, but like you said, hitting those corners, it didn't have the precision, the drill, and it looked okay. It just could have been a lot better. And of course, like we talked about, they had holes on the field. And I like the little MVSU that they made. I thought about you in watching the show because of their numbers. I think they can keep their horns facing the crowd, keeping their horns facing front, because of their size. And I think that it would really, really help them. I don't think any SWAC school does that. But I think that's something that Valley can bring to the table. I definitely think they can bring something from the CIAA to make themselves have their own name in the SWAC. Like you said, they are the black sheep. But if you then let them have a little bit more originality, or if you add a little of maybe the hybrid style, at least keeping the horns to the crowd, I think that would help them rise up in the SWAC. Dance features, the low brass was cranking, tubas is cranking, still didn't hear any trumpets. The dance routine it was the same. It looked like they started with the show, and of course since they were doing it in Jackson, everybody started to boo them. But for a second, they got hype with it. Like those boos really got them kind of going for a little second. So yeah. I was like, okay, y'all coming with it. But you got to keep that enthusiasm the whole time. The boom, the drum major salute, that's what I saw was that enthusiasm. I always see, however, there's always like a spacing problem, though, with the drum majors. Sometimes, like when they do the salute, there's always like a spacing issue. And I saw that again. And I would like to know, I have to hit up some of the people, what happened to why there's 4 drum majors this year instead of 5. I would like to hear that story. Other than that, I thought JSU had the better halftime show, mostly because of the sound. What did you think about the zero quarter?
It's really a lot of the same. I can tell that they're trying. I really thought Valley's trombones actually seem to be doing a pretty decent job. They seem to be pretty well balanced with each other. But there are definitely some things that are happening with the baritones and the mellophones. And this happens a lot all across the country with your baritone sections and your mellophones. And I would say to band directors, particularly with mellophones, I think you have to be choosy with who you put on your mellophone. Because one mellophone player can ruin a whole band. And also mellophones are without a doubt the hardest instrument to keep in tune. Number one, they're already a fifth away from every other instrument in the brass family, just as far as tuning is concerned in general. And many bands don't tune them to the F like they should. Instead, they always tune them to B flat, which doesn't effectively tune the mellophone. Also, just the nature of the instrument just makes it really easy for the pitch to go off. So when you already have an instrument that has so many inherent problems, you need to have a person or people that are going to be able to play with control and be able to understand where the notes are and not be so concerned about just blasting. You can't play the mellophone like a baritone. The baritone has similar problems, but the intonation is not as bad as the mellophone. But the mellophone, it should be a surgical instrument. If you're going to hit that note, whoo, whoo, you got to be on it. The mellophone is not just a hammer. And there were some issues there. There's a lot of times where you can kind of hear the mellophones just kind of going on their own thing and not really focusing. Just hit your note. You're a mellophone, so be mellow. Right. Your mellophone, we're going to hear you.
Right.
It doesn't really matter how soft you play. We're going to hear you. So just focus on being accurate. And the same thing was kind of happening with the baritones as well. You have individuals that are just trying to, I'm going to be the one to take out Jackson State by myself. And you got to understand, you're not going to be the one that's taking out Jackson State by yourself. When you're playing like that, you're actually making your section sound softer. You're making the whole band sound softer just because of how sound works. When you play louder than everybody else, my ear hears you, not the section. Mm-hmm. And so there was a lot of times where the baritones were really sticking out. Mellophones really sticking out. And that hurt the band. Trumpets could push harder, and the other instruments could play with a little bit more control there. I think that like they played Rolling Thunder, a Hampton standard. Like we would play it at that speed. And you could tell it's their first time trying to play that. If they were playing it before, they really weren't drilling it. So I'm thinking that this is probably their first time trying to play that. It was interesting that Jackson, they didn't play that. Like, oh, we should play a march. No. Valley was playing that march. I was like, gosh, it would be terrible if Jackson just decided to ignore that and play something. Oh, they did. No, we're not playing the march against you. We're going to play something that embarrass you with power. Initially, Jackson State, I thought the playing of Jackson State was just much better overall. I thought they did a better job of the attack release. Everybody's releasing together. You could definitely tell a clear difference in the sound as far as that's concerned. There's a lot of issues with Valley, like with the tuba section in general, with the attacks not being necessarily clean. But what I found is over time, going from the 0 quarter through the game and into the 5th quarter, that Jackson started to suffer the same issues that Valley was suffering. The only difference was Jackson has so many people that you can't tell as much. Right. When you've got 20-something baritones versus 8, you probably still have a bunch of baritones over there that are sticking out. But with Jackson, they've got 8 baritones that are sticking out versus 1 or 2. You can't really tell as much. So you kind of have to listen carefully to hear what's happening, to hear the imperfections. But there was some great moments that Jackson had. I really liked the whip appeal that they had. I really liked Valley's song choices. I like almost everything that Valley played, I recognized. And I thought it was interesting that very little of what Jackson played, I recognized. And I don't know if that's me or them. I don't know if they're song choices or perhaps there were just a lot of newer songs that they played, but I really didn't recognize a lot. But what they did sound pretty good.
I actually like Valley, their song selection. Like you said, I was able to recognize what they were playing, and they were playing it with enough control where I knew what they were playing. But the main thing, and I guess this is the theme for the show, is that confidence, man. Jackson State would come back with, like, anger. Like, how dare you, Valley? Why did you even show up? You hear it in the first note. And hopefully Hampton, hopefully they hear it, and a lot of other folks can hear it too. But it's that confidence, and it's what you believe. And shout out to Mr. Gray. I remember Mr. Gray when we were at Smith. He was really trying to instill that confidence in us. Think we are the best because we trained something he had us saying to make us believe that we were the best and that no other band was tighter than us and that we actually had to hit the field with that. It really worked out well when we went against South Carolina State. Shout out to South Carolina State. 96, all y'all folks, I will never let you forget that. Smith tore y'all down that day, South Carolina State. Boy, y'all took an L that day against 20 people. But yeah, these South Carolina State folks, boy, 96. I hope it ain't no tape out there. All right, everyone. If you're interested in becoming a sponsor or patron to the Marching Podcast, please contact the show and we'll give you the criteria so we can start to pub your business using our platform. We'll play your commercial, we'll post your website on our blog, we'll help send out information through social media. So contact us so we can help build your business.
Hey bandheads, this is Christy Walker. I'm alumni of the North Carolina A&T Blue and Gold Marching Machine and one of the creators of the fifthquarter.com. And you are listening to the 90 Degree Show on the Marching Podcast Network.
This is Gregory Drain, Director of Athletic Bands at Penn State University, former Marching Wildcat at Bethune-Cookman University. And you're listening to the 90 Degree Show on the Marching Podcast Network.
Hello, this is Charles Cheese Waters, proud graduate of Rusk College in Holly Springs, Mississippi, and father of the owner of Block Band Music and Publishing. And you're listening to the 90 Degree Show on the Marching Podcast Network.
All right, everyone, we have come to the end of our podcast. Check out the website and donate what's in your heart to themarchingpodcast.com. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter. Thanks to you for listening, and remember, the lectures you deliver may be very fine and true, but I'd rather give my lesson by observing what you do. See you next time.